welcome back to the Finding Your Feet podcast, a podcast show dedicated to helping you get closer to your true authentic self by helping you find your feet in life.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This week we are talking all about codependency. So for a really long time, codependency is something that I didn't really understand what it was. I'd heard about it, but I just didn't really get it. And then as I have evolved into the best version of me, just like been going to therapy and just like becoming more self-aware every day, you know. It's a constant process of self-actualization. I've started to understand more about what codependency is through personal experiences, and now I understand the concept now. So you might have heard of codependency, the term, but maybe you're not too sure about what it actually is or what it means. So we're going to go through all of that today about what actually is it, what the signs of codependent behavior, how to change it and sort of heal from it, and also talking about the victim and the saviour paradox. It's quite a deep episode.
Yeah.
We aren't skirting around fluffing it up today. We're getting right in to the nitty gritty. Yeah, we are. We're getting nitty gritty because I feel like the knowledge of like codependency and the victim and saviour and all that will transform relationships. Like Absolutely.
Just that awareness of it is so important. So yeah, even though it's like a really heavy like knowledge-based episode, it's really important things to learn.
But if you have been enjoying all the recent episodes and you want to leave us a little bit of feedback, just give us some star ratings on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and leave us a review as well on Apple. We have got some new ones recently and we absolutely love reading them. We literally fire them off in the group chat. We're like, oh my God, this is so nice. Like we read every single one and really appreciate it.
Yeah, show us some love.
So before we get into the chat, we're just going to actually read out to you the definition of codependency. There's like quite a few varying definitions, but this explanation kind of sums up the whole thing because codependency is like a process.
Yeah, it's hefty.
It's big. So codependency is a coping mechanism brought on by a trauma response of not having your needs met, most likely in childhood. It involves reliance on other people for validation, love, and self-worth, and a difficulty of owning one's own boundaries in the process while often taking on others' needs or manipulating others to feel secure. This can occur with a parent-child, a partner and a partner, a friend, or even a co-worker and a boss. It's a large spectrum and the dynamics change over time.
Yeah, so even from that, you can hear how layered it is.
Yeah.
But I think one important thing to understand is if anybody resonated with what Grace just read out, then don't fret because we're all codependent to some degree. But the reason we're talking about this is because it can become harmful, obviously, when it's to a different degree. Yeah,
like we all have elements of codependent behaviour, but we can still live really healthy lives regardless. But it's just... obviously it can get quite far down the spectrum where it is really damaging relationships and your life.
And only you will know, like in your heart. If these things ring true to you and you think that really does affect my life and I want to change that, then you'll know.
So these are some of the signs of codependent behaviour because I think this is the best way for you to be able to think now and listen and be like, right, am I codependent? If you resonate with any of these. So relying on others for approval, feeling responsible for others' thoughts, feelings and emotions and reactions, struggling to define and maintain personal boundaries, fear of saying no, fear of abandonment, perfectionism, making excessive and non-reciprocated sacrifices on behalf of a relationship, feeling inadequate, low self-worth, people-pleasing, and sacrificing your personal needs for the perceived desires of others. So obviously that list is really quite long, and it is they are like quite broad behaviors. Like I'm sure that probably everyone listening can relate to doing at least one of those things at least once in their life if it's not a common like habit. But that's like we said, like everyone actually is slightly codependent. We're all just on a varying spectrum of it. Obviously if you're literally feeling all those feelings like on quite an intense level for most of your life, then obviously you are someone who's got codependency to the point where you aren't living a healthy life. And one of the list of behavior on that I've just read out about the feeling responsible for others' thoughts, feelings, emotions, and reactions was something that I recognized in myself that I do. But just jumping in and getting deep here, because like we said, this is not a fluffy conversation today.
Yeah.
But like for me, growing up, my parents got divorced. I know a lot of people listening probably have had a very similar experience. I think that most people's parents are divorced more than they are actually together these days. But the divorce for me happened around the age of 13. So that was like an age where you are still a child, so you're still kind of irrational in certain ways, but you're also not. You're also becoming more aware of the world. Like you're becoming a lot more aware of your surroundings and emotions and things that are going on. So for me, going through that as like teenage Grace, I obviously wanted to fix the situation, as anyone kind of would, you as a child would, in that you want your parents to be together or whatever, or for things to be fine, your family, household environment to not be hostile, you want it to be calm. So for me, because codependency is a coping mechanism developed from some sort of trauma. So for me, I started to feel very responsible for other people in my family's feelings and emotions, all this stuff. And obviously a lot of the emotions that were going on at that time were, painful emotions, sadness, anger, all that kind of stuff that you can imagine would go into the feeling of divorce, grief, all of this. So for me, I was, as a little Grace, she was just like trying to fix the emotions of, and also the perceived desires and emotions of other people, my parents and stuff, like feeling responsible for how they felt and trying to fix that, trying to make things better, as if it was on my shoulders or something. And then obviously as a kid, like you just have no kind of rationale that that's not your responsibility and you don't need to worry about that and you don't need to do that. And then obviously that's how you develop codependency tendencies. So for me, that's the one I resonate with quite a lot, which is that feeling of responsibility for other people's feelings and emotions, and how that manifests is then into my adult life. I feel that for everyone I have a relationship or friendship with, is that I have some sort of responsibility for how they feel, even if it's kind of not even anything really to do with me, but I need to somehow fix it. And like you can see how it is very much a child it's very much an inner child playing up and playing into behavior there. It's not really an adult self doing it. Like you can see it's been driven from like an inner child, and you can see the innocence and like why the naivety and the innocence in why you'd be driven to do that as a child. But then as an adult, that's not helpful for you. It's not helpful for you as a child either, but it's not helpful for you because you can't be responsible for other people's feelings and emotions, like especially outside of the circumstances of where it's not even actually related to you. It's just something that they're having a problem with, or it's just their own life. For you to take that on and think that you have to fix it, and that you can't be calm and chill and be okay if they're not okay, isn't healthy. It doesn't mean that you then just don't care about people, because that's horrible. Obviously, if you've got friends and stuff that are upset, it's quite normal to feel upset too and feel their sadness. Like that's quite a human, it's just having empathy. But there's a line where it's like, it's not, you can't seem to leave it at the door, and you're taking it on as if it's your job to sort out. So for me, that's like where I noticed that I had codependent tendencies. And like I think that like obviously we're talking about this right now, but I think most people will, if they have it, will become aware of it through a bad experience in life. Because for me, like I think it was just like, just talking about things in therapy, really. It wasn't necessarily any one specific bad event that happened, but obviously when you are in therapy, you're talking about all your relationships, because they're a huge part of your life: friends, family, colleagues, everything. So I would just be talking about my mum, my family, my friends, you, do you know what I mean? Like just anyone, just talking about who's in my life. It's just as what it was on my head that day. That's why therapy is so beautiful, because you go in there, people are always scared about what they should talk about, but really you just go in there and you just kind of talk about what's playing on your mind, and that person helps you piece together maybe how you can move forward with things. So for me, I would just go in there and brain dump on a therapist, and then they were pointing out to me like this like codependency thing. Whereas I got awareness from it from you could say a bad experience, but that put me in therapy in the first place. But it was just like general talking. It's just puzzle piecing together stuff.
Yeah, stuff you may not realise. No, I think that's really good, and thank you for sharing that story, because I really feel like little stories like that help you put it into perspective.
Yeah. It's really hard to understand codependency unless you put it into an example or a context. It just
definitely, especially because there are so many like different ways codependency can show up. But I think as well, like your story really rings true for the fact that codependency turns up when a child has to grow up too quickly, and you take that stress on themselves. And obviously, as a child, like you said, the natural thing to do is to try and help. And I really feel like breaking it down and understanding, like for maybe people that are listening, if they think they're codependent, understanding where it came from, like the way that you do.
It's a trauma response.
Yeah. But it like helps you have compassion.
It's a coping mechanism.
For that little person. Because obviously you were taking on the pain of other people to cope, but then obviously in our adult lives that's not helpful, because we have our own pain and we don't want to keep taking on everybody else's, because I read in this book it was saying that codependency is like self-harm in a way, and I know that sounds a bit like heavy, but because you're like taking on this pain that you don't need to. But obviously that's just something you can pick up in childhood, and when you're much younger as well, you're much more likely to take on these beliefs and these behaviours. So that's why with this awareness, we can unravel it. And one thing that's really important to mention as well is that codependency is so possible to heal. So I think it can be quite scary as well when you first learn it. You think, oh my God, am I going to be like this forever? But you can just take little steps, and that's what we'll go for at the end as well, on how to heal this. But like, I mean, you were the perfect example as well of like on that healing journey.
Because I think it's like just being aware of it, like, so you know, if you resonate with some of the things I've said about what was on that list, like any of those items on that list, if you feel like you do them quite a lot to the point that it's actually debilitating your life in a way, then that awareness is everything, because you can't heal something you're not aware of. So I'm sure that I'll go forward into my life for the rest of my life still doing this, not on the same scale, but will still find myself at like thinking, oh, I'm like this person's whatever, my friend is having this problem, and feeling like I need to fix it, even though it's actually nothing to do with me. And actually, what the best thing that I need to do is just be a friend who listens and gives advice and supports, and that's it. Rather than like thinking that I need to save them. But I'm sure that I'll still do stuff like that all the time in my life, but it just means I've got the awareness of it now, so I can be like, notice within myself, like, okay, this isn't actually helping me, or probably this other person, so let's maybe stop doing that. Or even just like kind of just decide not to even go there in the first place, or because you know where that path leads to and what it actually is that you're doing, like, because again it's a coping mechanism and it's a trauma response. It's really unconscious and like deep, and I don't know. So you can just kind of you can aware of it to the point where before you do the behavior, you can be like, oh, I see what I'm about to do. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do
having that
awareness.
Having that awareness is so important. So from like your childhood experience, what you developed was hypervigilance, right?
So hypervigilance is a trauma response again. And basically its definition is that it's a state of increased alertness. So you're just basically in a state of hyper awareness of being alert to hidden dangers from other people or just anything in your environment, basically. So for me, growing up in a household where there was conflict and they were getting divorced and that makes sense why you develop hypervigilance, because if the atmosphere is always hostile, as a child, you're potentially not going to get your needs met, because if there's hostileness and like arguments and bad vibes, and like people are more, you know, like not saying like, it's just, like when you have an argument with someone, like you kind of just focused on having that argument, you're in fight or flight, like having an argument with someone, like if you feel, everyone knows it, if you have a little spat with anyone, like it's so draining, you're then not really gonna have as much energy, are you, to like fulfill the needs of a child. I'm not saying that I grew up having no needs met, like I grew up in a very nice safe house, but like, you know, there was divorce, so I'm like, and that's, it's not like it's uncommon. I mean, your parents got divorced as well.
No,
you know?
everything you're saying I can relate to, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially, no, well, not me, sorry, but another example is that I think I was reading in another one of my books called Good Morning Monster, fabulous book, guys, all about therapy trauma. And she was saying that hypervigilance can be developed a lot if people have been in abusive households, which is obviously just so obvious because you're scared for your safety. But of course that can mean in terms of needs as well. So you're scared you're not going to get your needs met. But if you're scared for your safety, you're obviously going to develop that hypervigilance that you will carry throughout your life. Yeah. And you're going to be more likely to always want to read the room, to always want to understand why is someone feeling like that. Yeah. Are they okay? Are they not okay?
Because hypervigilance is, like I said, it's being like really alert to hidden dangers from other people or in your environment. So if it's so say it's other people, so let's say it is like a physically abusive household, then obviously you're probably going to have quite serious hypervigilance, but more on that PTSD scale, because there's physical violence involved, and that's much probably deeper traumatizing and scarier than emotional violence and abuse. They're both really bad, but physical is different. Doesn't mean it's worse. Like emotional is really bad too. But so you'd understand why you'd be always on edge, growing up in a house like that. And then if there was but then let's say if, like from my example, say your parents are arguing a lot because they're getting divorced and there's all this drama going on, they're going to be pretty caught up in the drama of a divorce. So then you're not, like, in terms of that being a threat in your environment, like as a kid, you're potentially not going to get your needs met because that parent's emotions and focus is on other things instead of you. Doesn't mean you're completely abandoned and you don't get anything, but you've got to think, we're smart, like all humans are smart. All we're trying to do is survive. And when you're growing up, you're trying to form your beliefs about the world, about how you survive. That's what the subconscious mind is. So when you're growing up, you're literally soaking in everything and creating all your beliefs about the world so that you can live the longest that you can and survive and have your needs met and eat and survive. So if you're noticing that, oh well, I get a really, like, I don't get the emotional support from like a parent when they're distracted because they're having an argument or whatever, or I don't get, like, I don't know, a nice dinner or something like that, like, or whatever, or like, I don't know, like anything, I don't get my school bag packed or something, or that kind of little attention that you need as a kid, because you're a fucking kid, like you can't do anything for yourself yet, so you need that attention. You're not an adult yet, so you'll start to notice, not consciously but subconsciously, that your needs are not going to be met. Maybe if your mum or your dad is in a bad mood or something like that, because they're stressed about the many things that adults deal with in life. So then obviously you develop hypervigilance, because you're going to be hypervigilant to, oh, what mood are they in, what are their emotions, because that's going to dictate whether I get my needs met or not. So because you're just trying to survive. But so that's what hypervigilance is. But we wanted to actually talk about it, because hypervigilance, I think, can get really easily mixed up with being an empath. So what an empath is like, and being an empath is like a psychic gift. So an empath, by definition, is someone who feels more empathy than the average person. So they tend to be really accurate in recognizing emotions just by looking at someone's face. So just looking at someone, like you could just walk past someone or be in a room with someone and you can pick up on how they're feeling and their emotions, what they're actually going on before they actually open their mouth and tell you what's going on. They tend to recognize emotions in other people earlier than the average person. So like you could go into a room with someone who's an empath, someone who's not, and there's a sad person in the room who's pretending that they're happy, and the empath will pick up that person is sad way quicker than the non-empath person, just the average normal person. But what they also tend to do is, they recognize these emotions in others earlier, but they also rate them as more intense than maybe the average person would. But that's because they're feeling them on that more intense level, because they tend to be really sensitive people. Empaths, very, very sensitive to their environment. So they will probably spend a lot of time alone, be an introvert, recharge by being by themselves because they get so affected by other people's energies.
Yeah, I think it's good to highlight that as well, because I do see a lot of like people hearing what an empath is and then maybe thinking, oh, am I an empath? But I think highlighting that you could be an empath or you could just be hypervigilant. It's actually a trauma response, really important. Yeah. But I think with both of them anyway, like not to glorify being an empath, because I think with being either of them just comes kind of like a responsibility of knowing yourself better, because obviously with being an empath it can be very like consuming, especially to things like where something goes on in the world and stuff, and empaths will literally like pick up on the energy and it will like drain the life out of you. But I think definitely bringing the awareness to the fact that you could actually be hypervigilant and it's actually just a trauma response is really important.
Did you guys know that 90% of adults are deficient in at least one vitamin or mineral?
Yeah, that's crazy, 90%.
It is crazy. We do not get as much nutrition from our food as we used to, just because the quality of crops and all that now has changed so much.
That is mad.
And that's why I absolutely love taking Athletic Greens, because it's that all-in-one supplement that gives me all the nutrients that I need in one simple scoop. I've started taking Athletic Greens to manage my energy levels, and the biggest benefit that I've noticed is that I am not having such a drastic dip in my blood sugar levels. You know, when you get that 3 p.m. little crash, I am not getting that anymore, which is so good because it's really helping me have more energy and just have more focus and be more productive, because I'm not crashing all the time. It's so easy. I just take it in the morning. I look forward to having it as part of my morning routine. It's such a low maintenance habit with such high rewards. You just put one simple scoop in the cute little water bottle that they give you that's already got all the water measurements on there, shake it up, drink it, and you are on your way.
Yeah, exactly. Athletic Greens really, really helps with my hunger too, so that's a really good benefit. And what I also love about Athletic Greens is that I used to always like stress and worry that I'm not getting the vitamins and minerals that I need, but Athletic Greens literally takes out all the stress for you, because it's all in there ready for you to drink each morning. In just one scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus and aging. I mean, what more could you possibly need? Especially like those people that work from home, you know, like recovery, focus, everything like that. It really, really helps you concentrate and things like that. And not only that, it is very lifestyle friendly. So whether you are keto, paleo, vegan or dairy free or gluten free, you can have Athletic Greens. So I'm personally dairy free and Athletic Greens fits perfectly into my life.
And you can always count on Athletic Greens to use the best of the best products. They're constantly updating the formula, the recipe, the ingredients based on all the latest science, product iterations and third-party testing. But don't just take our word for how good AG is. They have over 7,000 5-star reviews and they are recommended by professional athletes and well-known people in the wellness world, such as Huberman Lab, you know, Andrew Huberman from the Huberman Lab podcast. He's a smart guy. Tim Ferriss and so many others.
And of course, we have a lovely little discount for you. So Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/findingyourfeet. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/findingyourfeet to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
My top tip to you if you are new to trying Athletic Greens is start with half a dose over the first few days of trying the product, just while you get used to it and your body adapts to getting all these nutrients that you're probably really depleted in. Yeah, because I think that being an empath can be slightly romanticized and, like you said, kind of glorified. So you can resonate with being an empath, but yeah, it might actually just be that you're hypervigilant. And then that's when it's not very helpful for you, because then you're just putting down the fact that you feel everyone else's feelings. Maybe you feel responsible for them, those feelings, that you're opening yourself up and picking up on everyone else's energies and feeling it and feeling the depths of everyone to the point that it's draining you. And then you just put it down to, oh, but I'm just an empath.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. And it's like, no, it could just be you've got hypervigilance. So that and that's not necessarily really a good thing, because hypervigilance is just draining you. You're just in a state of like fight or flight, and it's just draining you. And it's important to know that hypervigilance, one, isn't a normal like state to be in and way to be living your life, as in you can do and deserve to feel better than that. You deserve to just feel calm and happy and not on edge all the time. So I think that you can be putting up with hypervigilance because you're putting it down to the romanticized spiritual idea of empaths, and that's really unhealthy. So it's important to know the difference between the two, and then have an awareness, because because I'm speaking here from my own experience as well. Like, I heard what an empath was and was like, that's me. That is me. What a beautiful gift. And I definitely am an empath. I do have that sort of ability to read someone's emotions that I don't even really know, like as in to sense on them, like how they actually feel without even actually talking to them or whatever. So, and that's nice, because it means that you just have more empathy and you're like slightly more, got a bit more like emotional intelligence to be empathetic with others. But there's a line where that's not helpful for you. So for me, like, I just saw the definition of an empath and what it is and thought, oh, cool, that's what I am. And then I learned what hypervigilance is, and then I learned what codependency was, and then I learned about this feeling responsible for those feelings. And I thought, oh, there's a little bit more to it. So yeah, it's just like important to understand the two, because then I can decide how much of an empath I want to be, and it's called being an empowered empath. Because being an empath is a very beautiful thing, but can be fucking draining. I'm sorry, but you don't need to live your life feeling drained and dealing with other people's shit. Also, when you're like constantly, I think, in that state of being an empath and like really grounding into those like abilities to be one, and that sort of psychic gift, because it is a psychic gift. When you spend too much time in that and you don't have boundaries with it, you're not an empowered empath, then you can also attract in quite a lot of people, because they really feel that you have this deep empathy and depth to see their feelings and know what the truth is for them, and that really validates them and makes them feel a lot better. So there's beauty in it. That's nice that you can give that feeling to someone else, but you want to give that feeling of like validation and relief and support through that little gift you've got and that uniqueness about you to the right kind of person, to a healthy person. Because what can happen is you can really easily attract narcissists, you can really easily attract dark energy people, like who just are so unconsciously drawn into that deep empathy and light that you have. You literally feed them, and you're feeding them from like a place of nothing but like love, but it's at the detriment of yourself. So you're not being an empowered empath. So you need to learn about that too.
Because I think being an empath or empath tendencies are something you can develop through like training and stuff. But that's why it's important, exactly like you said, to know how to protect yourself and have boundaries. Because if you're learning how to read people's energy and you also don't know how to protect your own energy, then you're just going to end up soaking up everyone's energy. Because
you're not going to be of use to anyone.
Like since I started doing my training only in December, I can like read people's energies much better. Not like fully, but much better. But I am learning alongside that how to have very, very clear boundaries, which I think is so important. So that's a tip for anyone that's thinking, I'd love to be an empath. It's like you actually need to teach yourself properly. Otherwise, people can go into like being a psychic for years and years and actually never even put that boundary and end up like draining their whole entire life. So it's very important things to know.
Yeah. Like, that's why with spirituality, I'd love to combine it with like psychology and science and real practical mental health stuff, because like we said, you can fully romanticize and glorify, I'm an empath, but actually you just might have really bad hypervigilance, and that's not something you need to live with, and like that's something you should focus on healing, because that's not good for you. And yeah, that's why it's really important to like have a full 360 view of everything that's going on. Like that's why I will never look entirely to spirituality to fix my life or help me or self-develop me or heal me. I will look to that. I will look to mental health. I will look to science. I will look to psychology. You've got to look to everything, because it all goes in hand with each other, with each other. But we just want to talk as well about the fear of changing your codependent tendencies, especially the ones where you are codependent in the sense that you've created this caretaking dynamic. Because like we said with the list we read out before about codependency, it can also fall into things like feeling scared to say no, feeling inadequate, low self-worth, people pleasing, all that kind of stuff. For like when you've created codependency around that caretaking dynamic, which is kind of what I did, where you're feeling responsible for other people's feelings, so you kind of really create a dynamic with people where they really feel that they can come to you, but then you're holding it all at the detriment of yourself. That's the kind of caretaking dynamic we're talking about, like abandoning your boundaries, and like, you know, your personal needs, personal boundaries, where your lines are with things, because you are just through perceived desires of the other person. What I'm talking about here is the fear of changing the caretaking codependent dynamic that you have potentially created. People can have a lot of fear around, because once you've gained this awareness, like, oh, okay, heard Grace and Abby chatting about this, I resonate with some of these things. Do you know what, actually I have I have codependent tendencies, and they play up a lot in my relationships in my life. I don't want to be this anymore. I don't want to do this. I'm empowered. I want to choose better for me. I want to put me first and take care of my needs and my health and my wellness. I'm ready to change. Then you can be scared to actually implement the change, because you think that person, because the reason why you've created a caretaking codependent dynamic is because you wanting validation and love. So the reason why you're doing that for someone is because you think, if I do this, they will love me. Yeah. They will validate me and they will appreciate me. But actually, you know, in a healthy relationship, you don't need to do that on that scale for them to appreciate you. They'll just appreciate you for who you are, not what you're doing for them and doing to them. And again, obviously there's scales, there's lines with it, there's spectrums, because obviously, like, you know, I probably do things for you, the little things that you think, oh, that's nice. Like, you do things for me, like you sometimes write me cards. That's really cute. That's not a codependent thing, but I think that's something I really appreciate about something that Abby does. And it's all a part of who you are as well. So when I'm saying, it's not black and white with everything that I'm saying, but what I'm talking about here is like those, like I said, the caretaking codependent dynamics where it's at the detriment of your own needs and your own well-being and happiness and everything. So you can be scared to actually make those changes because you think that relationship's going to end and fall apart, friendship, anything, if you stop showing up in that way. Even if you don't want to show up in that way anymore. But you don't need to fear that, because the only friendships, relationships, and dynamics that are going to fall away and exit your life as a result of you stopping your codependent tendencies and showing up as that healthier, happier, better version of you are the unhealthy relationships that are not meant to last a lifetime anyway. The ones that are built on trauma bonds and stuff like that, because the relationships that will stick around even when you transition out of being a codependent and stop showing up with those codependent tendencies are the good relationships that are really authentic. They're based on like authentic connection and love for who you are. Like, because when you stop being codependent as well, your relationships, the ones that fall apart, were shit anyway. Let them go and don't even look back. Like, they're not meant for you. They were built around you showing up unhealthily. And you don't need to do that anymore because you deserve better than that. So the relationships that will stay in your life are the ones that were not built on the foundation of what that person could get out of your codependency caretaking tendencies. They were built on real connection, real love, real support, and authenticity. Like that person actually sees you for who you are, and like the beauty and everything that you bring to the world, not just, oh, this person holds my emotions and like lets me dump all my shit on them and like just helps me with it.
Yeah. And I think as well with that, with relationships falling away in that dynamic, they may not even realise that.
Oh no, it's so subconscious.
Yeah.
It's so subconscious. It is not at all calculated or anything. They will fall away in the most natural way because the dynamics change on that subconscious level.
Yeah.
They will not think, oh, this person isn't taking care of all my needs and emotions anymore and like doing all this stuff for me at the sake of themselves. I'm not going to hang out with them anymore. It's just because that dynamic, if you stop showing up, feeding that, like enabling that person to do that, then obviously it's not going to work anymore. But yeah, it's unconscious, and it's because the reason you form these relationships, again, it's on an unconscious level for you because you were doing all this codependent stuff on an unconscious level. Now you brought it to the conscious awareness and now you want to change it, so you're going to change it. But this other person, the reason they've been attracted to you is, again, like that trauma bond thing. It's because you were feeding part of their wound as well. So I'm not saying everyone that you have a relationship with where you show up in that codependent caretaking manner and then that relationship falls apart because you heal and you change and you're healthier and you stop doing those things, that it falls apart, that then that person was shit. It's not because they're like, it's in their unconscious as well, like they aren't aware of what's going on.
It just makes so much sense why people do feel like petrified, even unconsciously, again, to change, because they think they're not going to get that love. But I think that just reminded that the only relationships you want in your life are the ones that are built on true love and values. So like embarking on healing your codependency and letting those relationships fall away will be the best thing you ever did. Because think about all those times where your energy has felt drained, where you've like felt almost helpless that you can't help a situation, or that you want to know how someone's feeling and you just can't seem to feel at peace with yourself and you can't understand why. And it's because you're giving away your energy to everybody else. So when you're in that stage where you think this feels really scary to say no, you know, like people pleasing. Or you say to people, "Oh, stop people pleasing." It's not that easy because they literally think that their whole like value and everything, their worth is based on saying yes. But I think just remember that, like in that moment, you're giving that energy back to yourself, and like that is like one of the most healing things you can do. Yeah,
you've got to become like your own parent, your own best friend, and like your own like number one cheerleader and like support. So you got to give to you first, but also like the good healthy relationships that even if you change and start showing up as a non-codependent version of you, that will still stay strong and still be there. You're going to be so much better. Like, say for example, like you're sat there and your friend is having a problem and they're telling you all about their problem. They want to have their emotions validated. They want to be heard. They want some advice and they want some support. That's what happens when a friend comes to you when they've got something wrong. That's not codependency. That's just a normal part of a friendship. But how you'll experience that is you can sit there and you can give that person advice and support and emotionally support them and make them feel better and be that good friend that you want to be. But then you can leave it there and you're not then going home and carrying it in yourself and then feeling like it's your responsibility to fix all that stuff, because as well, that person, the healthy relationships that still stay, these are the ones I'm talking about, that person doesn't want you to go away and think it's your responsibility or you to fix it. That's too much pressure on them. They just want to come and talk to their friend about something that's on their mind and get a bit of like another point of view on it, or just some sort of little help, like, but they don't want you to change that. Like, they don't want you to fix it for them because they're going to fix it themselves. They just want a sounding board and just a little bit of support. But when you're on that codependency, caretaking tendencies in yourself, you don't see it as that. So you don't show, actually, when you heal that within yourself and you can show up not doing that, like that, you're going to be a better friend.
Yeah, because you can actually potentially harm the other person.
Yeah, you can.
Because obviously people need to live through their own experiences.
Yeah,
and
they
grow through everything
do.
they go through. Yeah, and if you're in that codependency mindset and you're giving too much or putting too much pressure on them, you can literally stunt their growth, and it's harmful to yourself, and it's also harmful to the other person.
Yeah.
So definitely keep that in mind too.
Yeah, everyone's on their own journeys. Like, your friends will come and sit and talk to you about what's wrong with their life, whatever, and all this stuff. But like, they're just on their own path at the end of the day. So like, they're gonna figure things out, and you're just their mate. It's all right. You got your, like, you just figure out your own shit. It doesn't mean you abandon your friends or anything like that, but as a codependent, that's what you kind of think.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're really resonating with a lot of what we're saying in this episode today, and you feel like you want to get some sort of external support and someone to talk to about this so that you can heal and grow into the best version of you, we have the perfect resource for you. BetterHelp, that's help, H-E-L-P, and BetterHelp is a professional, secure online counselling service. So wherever you are in the world right now, BetterHelp services are available to you. You can be matched up with a professional licensed therapist in just 2 days of signing up for an account, and you can get therapy, the support you need from the comfort of your own home, because it's all done online.
Yeah, so to start your therapy journey with BetterHelp, all you do is fill in a questionnaire online of what your needs are, and they will match you with a perfect therapist for you. And they have a huge range of expertise, so whatever you feel like you need the support for, they can find the right therapist for you. And BetterHelp is also much more affordable than traditional offline counselling, and they are very kindly offering our listeners 10% off your first month of therapy.
Just head to the link betterhelp.com/finding your feet. That's betterhelp.com/find your feet for 10% off your first month of online therapy with BetterHelp. Like they say as well, like a lot of the people that work in healthcare actually have wounding to do with codependency, hence why they're in those kind of jobs. But again, those kind of jobs are they're not killing them. It's not the detriment of their well-being and their health. I mean, yeah, they might actually work in the NHS and it's pretty mental, but like they enjoy doing it. It's not toxic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it's a fulfilling career. So that's what I mean. Where we all have these codependency sort of things, but it's on a spectrum. So like that's just all these people that work in care that have that sort of that feeling of like responsibility for other people's feelings, whatever, but it's on a spectrum where it's like that's why they've been attracted to do that kind of job, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, like so it's about just knowing where you fall on that spectrum. But I think we should actually just talk about like because with codependency as well, where if you've grown up where you've developed that trauma response to develop codependency, you can actually, because you've not had your needs met in childhood, you can actually swing the complete other way, which is hyper dependence, which basically just means you're super independent to the point that you won't let anyone do anything for you. You think you need to do it all by yourself. You take everything on and just deal with it by yourself. You don't open up to anyone else. And from that, I think that gets quite celebrated in society.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, that you've got like a hard shell or whatever.
Yeah, but like, so obviously I think being codependent, I think, is way more potentially damaging for you and for others around you than being hyper dependent. But in being hyper dependent, you're missing out on vulnerability, and you're missing out. That's what builds connection and relationships. That's how you deepen friendships, is by being vulnerable and being real and being a fucking human, and stop pretending to be a perfect robot that's got no problems or feelings. Like, that's not what, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like those suppressed emotions that you will suppress if you make yourself feel like a robot will be stored in your body for years. Like, it's not something that just passes you by. Like, having that hard shell and not being able to feel your emotions, not putting any shame on it, but that's what will build shame and build these emotions in your body that you will eventually need to release in some way.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to go somewhere. But again, like, pure compassion to you right now if you resonate with hyper dependent, because the only reason that you feel that is because you didn't have your needs met when you're younger, and you just resorted to thinking, well, no one else is gonna fucking save me, so I have to save myself. And like, like, compassion to you, like, that's. But again, like, there is good people out there in the world that you if you are brave enough to open yourself to in the future, because like you form that hard shell because you've had to. So be gentle with yourself, and with time, if you can heal and learn to soften that, then you get to open yourself up to what it's like to have supportive friendship and a good relationship and stuff like that. Because, you know, like supportive friendships and things like that, they build massive amounts of resilience within you. They're so healthy. You live longer if you have strong relationships. They're so crucial for your well-being. But we also just wanted to just quickly reel off what is healthy because the middle between codependency and hyper dependent is interdependence. So this is kind of where you want to be.
Yeah, that's what we're aiming for.
So some signs of an interdependent relationship are healthy boundaries, active listening, so that's you listening to them and you feeling listened to. Time for individual interests. So you're not completely, you know how many people go into a relationship and lose themselves, lose their own passions and interests and like uniqueness and like what they like to do, and they fully get absorbed in this other person's world. That's not healthy. So yeah, still taking time for individual interests in the relationship, taking personal responsibility for behavior, creating safe spaces to be vulnerable, being open and approachable even with difficult issues. You don't need validation from each other, but when you do come together, you both really cherish each other in the relationship. But there's not that sort of, I need you to, but like, so you still have a lot of self-validation, and you're cool. You don't need your partner to validate you. But when they are giving you love and compliments, when you are coming together, like it just feels so good. So it's like you got your solid cake of validation that you've already baked, and then everything they bring you is just the icing on the top. But you're not living at the mercy of needing that from them.
Yeah.
Because then that's not healthy. So yeah, that's interdependence, because I mean, we've got to talk about what's healthy too.
Yeah, exactly.
Because how are we going to know what we got to aim for, guys?
Yeah, exactly. That is what we're all aiming towards. And it's obviously a journey every single day. So if you ever fall into like different habits, just knowing like that actually that's what we should be aiming for and that's what you deserve is really important. But the last thing we're just going to touch on is the victim and the saviour paradox. Because
dun, dun, dun.
it sounds so dramatic because it is dramatic and you don't want to do this. So this can happen very much with codependent tendencies, where you may have grown up with, say, one of your parents, you felt like you wanted to save them. And this could be from mental health. This could be that they simply weren't present. It could be maybe substance abuse, something where you felt maybe that hypervigilance towards wanting to help them growing up. And then we can grow up and get into our adult lives and we can fall into relationships where unconsciously we want to save that person. And that could be a friendship or a romantic relationship or even like a boss, actually, to be honest.
I think it's most common, this sort of dynamic in romantic relationships.
Yeah, because it's like such deep things. But I think you can be drawn unconsciously to those people. Definitely. And the two main reasons why you may do this is because, one, this is familiar to you. So obviously we talk all the time about our subconscious minds and what is familiar to us, and in our comfort zones we will attract, even if it's not healthy for us. So if you're used to wanting to save someone, then you're going to probably seek out someone that you also want to save. And then the second reason, which I just think is really sad, is that you never got the opportunity to save that person you wanted to save. So you're going to go about and find other relationships where you're going to try and do that. And obviously because that is built on a trauma bond, you're probably not going to succeed and you're going to cause yourself more pain. Yeah. And in this process, you become the victim. So you're no longer the saviour. It kind of switches forces and you become the victim in that, well, more than likely romantic relationship. And I think like with that little fact, like the awareness of it is so important because, as I said, it is really unconscious and you may not even realise you're doing it. Yeah,
so unconscious.
It's like subliminal messages as well. I don't
so
always say subliminal, but it literally is. Yeah, like it's
and
like
that person that wants saving, the victim, can fully feel your desire to be a saviour.
Yeah,
without
so
you aren't saying, "Oh, by the way, like my parent was really financially like unstable when I was growing up. They never had enough money." And they were always so stressed, and I really want to like save them by bringing massive wealth to them when I'm older or whatever. Like you wouldn't even have to literally say that to the person that's playing it, because you then might end up dating and attracting a guy who has finance problems and looks to you to save him, and neither of you have ever had a conversation about the fact that this is actually really similar to what you felt with your parents or anything, but they're just, it's that subliminals, it's unconscious, it's energy, they just sense it. And again, like, I'm not saying they're bad for being drawn to you for that. You both feeding into each other's woundings here. But you always going through your life wanting to be the saviour is dangerous for yourself.
Yeah.
Because it isn't going to work. But again, I think this is one of the things that you don't really gain awareness on until you go through an experience as an adult where you've tried to be the saviour and it hasn't fucking worked, and you've ended up as the victim of the person that was playing into the victim thing. And then that's where you're like, okay, why the fuck did this thing happen in my life? And then you're like, if you choose to, not everyone chooses to do this, but shit things happening are a really, really great opportunity to sort yourself out and become a better version of you and heal and, you know, get rid of blind spots in your mind and stuff. Like, sometimes we have to have events that trigger us to know that we didn't have a trigger in the first place.
Yeah.
So usually you trying to be a saviour and it not working out, because it never does, you have to experience that once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. Maybe you've got to experience it for 20 years before you realise and you decide, you know what, this is not working, and why am I doing this? If you ask yourself that question, then you will find the reason why, because it's deep into your subconscious. Not like it's not that it's deep and it's hard to access, it's just you don't really notice it because it's all you've ever known. So until you have a situation that triggers you, that's the only thing that stops you and makes you think.
Yeah.
Otherwise you don't know, because it's, you only know what you know.
Yeah.
Until you know better, you do better. Like, so to heal that, awareness is the most important thing. And I think personally that this saviour and victim sort of dynamic and paradox is something that you kind of have to unpack in therapy as well, because I think that it's just like I said, it's all you've ever known, so it's a bit like you really do need somebody who's objective to just point out patterns to you.
Yeah, exactly. I think with that, and also just with codependency, I think therapy can be really, really helpful. But if you don't have access to therapy right now and you think, oh, I've definitely got some codependent tendencies, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, which I'll put in the show notes, and this psychologist was explaining this really simple exercise to help you when you feel triggered or feeling like you want to kind of like overgive.
Yeah. Be codependent,
basically in a relationship. So she basically said that when you feel the urge to, so this is kind of like the caretaker dynamic that we're talking about here. So when you feel that urge to kind of give too much away, and she was explaining it is an urge because it's like a trauma response, sit with it and rate it from 1 to 10 how uncomfortable it feels for you. And then when you're rating it, just actually ask yourself, like, how can I help this person? How can I protect my energy while helping this person? Do I even need to help this person? Is it helpful for me? And as you ask yourself those questions, obviously you can go ahead, help them if you want. If it's your friend and they want advice, of course, help them. But remind yourself to protect your energy in that process. And then each time you do this, and each time you feel that urge, just keep rating it from 1 to 10. And if you are kind of keeping aware of how much you're giving away, and keeping in mind, is this serving me? Over time, the rating of how uncomfortable that is should start to go down, and you should start to feel better. And that's just like a really simple exercise to just check in with yourself, because I think like codependency is really impulsive. Like you just go for it. Yeah. So I think to check in with yourself really, really quickly, say, is this going to serve me? What can I give to help them? Of course, because you want to help people, but to also help yourself and not take on pain that you don't need to take on. So just keep rating it from 1 to 10, and hopefully it should start going down, and through that you'll just become much more aware of your behaviour anyway. Yeah,
because I think when you do that first one, it's like ripping off a plaster. You'll be a bit scared, but when you do that first thing where you're like, you don't act on the urge and you don't compromise yourself or your own needs for the sake of the other person, especially for the perceived desire of that other person that we're talking about. So it's not even that they've said, I want you to do this. You just think that they want you to do that. So you're compromising yourself to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
So the first time you don't do that will be the hardest time. But then once you do it and then you see that, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad, and actually they didn't hate me for it, so I can do it again.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's about building up that confidence to not have that fear about changing that caretaking codependent dynamic. Obviously, someone who does protest against you not doing that codependency urge that you maybe have, is what I'm saying is the trauma bonds, the toxic relationships, the ones that are not here to withstand the test of time. The healthy ones will not respond like that. They won't even respond at all. Just be nothing, because they're not, you don't need to do that for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway. Whew! We made it through the episode, guys. Well done if you're still here.
Yeah.
Pretty hench. So we're going to wrap it up there, but thank you so much for listening. Hope it was helpful.